I'm Ingrid Severson, Project Manager for the Pacific Southwest MHTTC. Welcome you to part two of our motivational interviewing in April with Dr. Kristen Dempsey. Today's session is Spirit of Motivational Interviewing, Building Strength and Connecting to Intuition, Motivational Interviewing and Affirmation Skills for Youth and Young Adults.
Thank you so much, Ingrid. Kind of a part two. We're going to be talking a little more about the spirit of motivational interviewing, which is, if you're here from yesterday, really talk about the fertile field of which we developed this approach. And we'll be getting a little bit more into the skills. And we'll talk, of course, start to get talked about that in a minute. But before I do that, I'll just introduce myself. If you weren't here yesterday, I'm Dr. Kristen Dempsey. I am a practicing therapist in the San Francisco Bay Area. I also am a counselor, educator, and instructor. I do a lot of work around motivational interviewing in terms of training, and I use it as part of my teaching, doing some writing around motivational interviewing. So today, I'll be continuing more with this idea of the spirit of openness and affirming really how to build this sense of uh, wellness and strength and to some degree like self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is that sense that it's good simplification here, but like I can get things done. And to answer the really great question about like what makes motivational interviewing motivating, I love that question so much. I'll probably come back and drop into that in various points throughout this training. But one of the ways motivational interviewing is motivating is that we do focus a bit on some of the pieces that people bring already, some of the strengths that we already have, some of these qualities, and that our spirit, our attitude as practitioners is that we really value, we really prize people's strengths, their abilities, what they've already done, some of their various activities, like who they are as people. And part of that is accepting folks as whoever they are and with a sense of absolute worth, but also knowing that everyone has a true specialness and everyone has this ability to engage in this process of moving forward and changing. So that's what we're really going to focus on today is thinking about this idea of affirmation, strength, values. I mean, things that we can really use to build people up because that's motivating. Think about it. I can know all my problems. I can know them inside and out. We could talk about them. We could diagram them. I could learn all about them. I could talk to a doctor about all my problems. I could go online and all that's very insightful. And there may be some things even about learning about best practices, ways to treat my problems. But here's the thing, it's hard to get motivated to work on my problems if I just see myself as a problematic person. If I just see myself as, the result of my problems or my problems in some ways define me, that in and of itself isn't terribly motivating. I think that might be different depending on, who I am and my age, my environment, my context, my resources. I think I can safely say, and many of you, of course, are working with young people, for young people, young adults and such. Um, that gets hard to feel inspired. That gets hard to feel like I can move on if I don't have as much experience in life, to think about, yeah, to tackle my problems, without a lot of experience or perspective on myself. If I don't also have a connection to like what I'm doing right. We all need a certain amount of perspective and sharing and balance. Like I'm a person who has this issue, but I'm also a person with a lot of strengths. And by recognizing myself as someone who's strong in a number of different situations, that's going to really allow me to rally and to get what I need and to be willing to do something different in order to work on whatever issue it is that I need to work on. Yeah, I'm noticing some great comments in the chat box there. It's that reframing things, finding different perspective is actually a really helpful way of approaching, some aspect of any of our struggles. Maybe also just this idea of our affirmations focused on strength based, and absolutely affirmations are when we're looking for characteristics, and I'll go into this in a minute. We're looking for the gifts that people have, whether that's something that they've done in the past, strengths, characteristics that they currently have that we really want to build up and notice and show and work with. because that helps people feel empowered. Right, back to that spirit of MI. And this stuff is motivating. When I feel empowered, when I feel I'm strong, when I feel like I'm worthy, makes me, engages me in such a way that, I have some hope. And hope's a really important part of all this, right? Yeah, as Sharon says, because staying stuck is no fun, right? Staying stuck is no fun. So that's where we'll start. We'll start with what are affirmations anyway? I'll explain that. And I'll make a distinction. I think we have a common language around, or a common thought around affirmations that maybe come from this idea of like affirmation is, anything positive. We're a little more specific than that, maybe in motivational interviewing. And that's where I'm going to get into a bit about affirmation versus praise. It's, this idea of like affirming somebody's qualities, let's say, versus I think praise is coming from me as an evaluation. I think you're doing so great. That's wonderful, right? That kind of thing of me giving a bit of um, uh, kind of approval of how someone might be doing. Not like praise is a bad thing, but we're just trying to think about how they're different. Um, your turn, kind of, we'll create affirmations on the fly. We'll have a chance to do that. One of you mentioned who it was like, how do we do this motivational interviewing? We're working with young people, and it's like everything's moving so quickly. How do we do some of this on the fly? So you'll get a chance today to do some affirming on the fly, which can actually be very helpful. We'll also spend some time just doing some value sorting, like this idea of thinking about what kind of values do I have, and why is that important? And I like to think of values as a way of helping people seek out and find and move toward a direction in life. It's hard to feel motivated for any of us. We don't have a sense of where we're going. Right? That can be a very challenge, a very difficult thing. Like, why should I? Why should I change? What's the point here? Why does it matter? And that might sound familiar to many of you, right? If you have people coming in, sitting with you, especially if they were, as I like to say, voluntold to come and see you, and maybe the sense of like, why? What's the point? And so values helps people get to a sense of like, here's the point. The point is like you care about things, and let's help you move towards what you care about. And then we'll also talk a bit about characteristics of successful changers. So, motivational interviewing, in the simplest way, it's about having conversations about change. Right? It's a certain way of having conversations about change. I'll go ahead and review that before we get started. But we're helping people buy into some of this. Again, what's making it motivating is that people are finding ways of thinking about coming to terms with recognizing maybe ways that they've been successful changers, ways that they can actually you know identify as someone who has has qualities that allow them to be unstuck. So we'll talk about that because there's ways we can use these tools to help people get unstuck. Okay, let me just look at some of the comments. There's some really good comments that are coming through. I just want to pay attention to those really quickly. Um, yeah, so okay, so many of you are kind of already thinking about what affirmation is. Really appreciate that. And James has an interesting point here at 2:13 p.m. Like affirmation is specific and shows I'm paying attention, where praise might feel really empty. I think that's an important point. And I think that's why sometimes we have people not recognize praise or say, oh, you're just saying that. You don't really mean it. Like it doesn't feel sincere. Whereas affirmation is so specific that it's hard to deny. We're going to actually finish up the day because I think it's a wonderful upbeat way of finishing. We're going to finish up our time coming up with just a load full of affirmations. We're going to make a whole list of affirmations, not just a list of these of quality, but the types of things you could say to someone that's affirming, as well as open-ended questions that would allow you to um, help someone explore their qualities. We're going to do that at the very end, so that'll be a nice way of finishing up with that. About this idea of those who are afraid of change. Change can be really scary because they haven't felt success before and they don't know if they can handle it. Yeah, I mean, change and doing something that feels like really positive and good for someone who's had like a big history of trauma, right? Or as an example, might be other things too. Even though that could be something they want more than anything, it can also just be terrifying. It can be terrifying, especially if it feels like I'm going to have put myself more vulnerable for more failure? We'll talk a bit about that. That's a really, really great question. So some things we'll be doing today is we'll be thinking about three strength qualities that can be affirmed and supported among help seekers. So that is something that we'll be able to have a conversation about at some point. Like, what are some of these qualities? So some examples, maybe start thinking about how they show up folks that we work with. Um, we will also talk about like different interventions. So there is like the affirmation statement or reflection. There's using values lists. There's kind of reviewing this idea of successful changers. Those will be some interventions. And we'll also be thinking about some of these value sorting and tools and characteristics of successful changers as ways of helping to promote strength and competencies, and direction among help seekers. So even if someone doesn't know they aren't really in touch with some of their strengths, or even if we're just learning about them, how it happens many times we're talking with someone, we don't know much about them. Maybe they're not talking to us much. Maybe they're not saying a lot. Maybe there's a lot of, I don't know. I don't know what to say here. I don't know what to do. Some of these other tools like value sorting and some of these successful changer tools can help us get some conversations generated. So we're going to get into affirmation. And as we do this, let me just start here by just doing a little quick how this fits into motivational interviewing and the bigger picture. So we have a couple of hours in these trainings, which are great. And a traditional kind of like motivational interviewing training might be anywhere from like 6 to 12 hours. So you might be going through, a whole number of skills and processes, and in addition to the spirit. So I will just pause here and kind of pulled out this piece for us to discuss in a couple hours. And I'm really confident you're going to have things you can take and use right away. But I would like to just kind of maybe pull back a little bit and just say, let me give some context for how we're using this. Motivational interviewing is a way of having conversations. And it's not just for counselors or people on like the counseling behavioral health in the community. It's for anyone who's working with people where there's part of their work is having conversations about change. So I do some of this work with people in corrections. I do a lot of work with people in schools, do a lot focus on like public health, um, health and human services programming. There's a lot of different places where we're having conversations about change, and it's I like to think of it as an engagement strategy. So part of what motivational interviewing is what we talked about yesterday. It's a way of being, this open, flexible, um, collaborative, and affirming and accepting, compassionate way of being, so people have psychological safety, right? So that's the place that we start with. We use a lot of good common therapeutic factors like reflective listening, affirmation skills, which we're going to talk about right now, summarizing, open-ended questions we'll talk a little bit about later on, as well as particular ways of giving information and advice in order to really help people generate conversations about change. We start where people are at, and we gradually start to help them find a place of focus. And in that place of focus, we want to engender conversations so we have a place to really be able to support some of that change talk or change in language that might come up about maybe some ways that they might be able to start to move away from the status quo. So, in all this discussion, ways of being able to move toward some of this change talk, or once we have, we call change talk. And change talk, just very simply, they're like reasons to do things differently. There's a need to change situations. There's, steps that people have done to change their behavior, things that people are willing to do. There's commitments that people have made, things that people want to have different in their life. Like as folks start talking about this stuff, we have an ability here to use some of these skills, including affirmation, to build it, to reinforce it, trying to reinforce change talk. Because the more it's reinforced, the more we move the momentum of that conversation toward change, towards doing something different. And this is a big piece of what makes motivational interviewing motivating, is that we start where people are willing to start, and we help them feel safe with the spirit. So talk more as they talk. We get this opportunity to start to reinforce the places that are going to help them get unstuck. And affirmation's a part of that. So I'm going to now like give you kind of that broad view, kind of thinking of the big, spotlight in the sky. Now I'm going to kind of pull in the view, maybe have more of a flashlight on affirmation. And so affirmation is just a specific type of statement, not a question, but it's a statement that focuses on the help seeker's positive attributes. And I use the term help seeker because I know we use different terms for the people who come in for support. Some of you patients, clients, participants, members. We have a lot of different names, consumers. So I use the term help seeker. The nice thing about affirmations is that they can be like really specific, right? There's a really specific piece. And what they do when we're able to notice, when we're able to be present with someone's positive traits, that their characteristics, what they bring to the world, then that really helps links all of us to inherent worth, right? I could be someone coming in and maybe I have a lot of shame right now. Maybe I really legitimately hurt someone or did something that was a pretty significant rule breaking situation. Well, as a helper, as a provider, I'm in a position of potentially helping someone observe what they've done, certainly be held accountable, but move on in their life in such a way that potentially change their behavior and make different choices, see different options. Maybe I'm linking them to different resources, not necessarily blaming someone for what happened. There could be a whole number of reasons. I don't know. There's different contexts. But I do know that when people are feeling a certain amount of shame or if they're stuck in the status quo in a particular way, it's hard to feel worthy. We can feel so frustrated, so stuck, so beat down in some ways that we don't necessarily feel worthwhile. Like, why should I even change? I'm not even worth it, right? We hear this a lot, especially for working with someone who might have a bit, self harm going on, or maybe even some thinking of suicide. These are things that certainly come up. So part of being able to affirm is helping to recognize like you are a worthy person. You have worth. We value you. We're glad that you're here. There's something that you're bringing. What another thing that the affirmations do is that they really function in a particular way to support and encourage people, as I've been mentioned before. Right? There's a sense of when I affirm you, I'm going for things that feel good. I'm recognizing ways that you're contributing, and you've done this, and I'm basically saying, do more of it. When I'm noticing that it was courageous for you to say no to someone who's trying to get you to do something you didn't want to do. If I'm witnessing that, if I'm noticing that, then that makes it feel like so much better, even if you were unsure about whether or not that was the right thing to do or if it was okay. A lot of people being assertive is really difficult. I had someone do that to me earlier today, actually. I was telling them a story about me asking someone something and I wasn't sure. Oh, maybe I should have asked for that favor. I don't know. It doesn't do. And they were completely affirming about like how much courage it took and what an incredible thing it was. I stood up and asked for what I needed. I do this for a job, right? I mean, I do this all the time. I'm teaching you all. And I didn't even see it myself until someone else kind of reflected that back to me. And it was a piece of, oh, yeah, that's cool. That feels good. I'm glad I did that. And now I'm more inclined, I'll be honest with you, I'm more inclined to do it again to stand up for myself because we don't always get positive feedback. We don't always get what we need immediately in the moment when we stand up for ourselves. In fact, in some situations, as we know, people get the opposite. Right? If they stand up for themselves, they set a boundary. Sometimes they don't always get rewarded for that. So we're rewarding people when we can see like this is an important aspect of how they took care of themselves. Affirmations also build our therapeutic alliance and it supports engagement and retention. People leave us feeling good about what just happened here, even when it wasn't their idea to come and see us. Right? There's something that's really important about like, yes, I'm being nice to someone. I talk about this, but that's not it. I'm being genuine, and I'm really caring about them. I'm really building out their character, really recognizing who they are, really seeing them as a person. That makes me feel more like I want to come and see you and come back and see you again. You're somebody in my life that I feel safe around, and that you help me feel good in a way that feels good and feels right. And it also affirmations are really state what's true about someone. We wouldn't want to affirm something that we're making up, be able, to notice something, like to give someone encouragement about something maybe that they hadn't done. Because people know when it's fake, but um, it has to be legitimate and it has to be genuine. Because once folks know we're giving an affirmation for something that's not really there, now people can doubt us. But if we're specific and say, listen, I'm noticing, I'm seeing this, even if it's harder for someone to really kind of take that in, if it's something they've actually done, right? It's harder to deny. That's also why affirmation is really helpful when it's specific like that. But we're stating what's true so people can really be witnessed. Also, kind of related to this, there's an idea, I know in dialectical behavior therapy, about being careful not to validate the invalid. So we don't want to be affirming things we don't want to see, necessarily. So, give you an example. Maybe if I'm working with a young person and, they, in the process of maybe standing up for themselves, they got into a big like fist fight, or some sort of like fight. So I mean, there's definitely an aspect of like, okay, they stood up for themselves, but I don't want to be affirming like how they stood up for themselves necessarily. I don't want to be promoting that they get into fist fights every time, like they want to stand up for themselves. So I might not do the affirmation. I mean, I might just do a lot of reflection and help, really understand their situation. And as I get to have a more specific conversation about noticing their willingness to stand up for themselves, that might be the piece that I can affirm. And, what are some options of being able to do this in ways where, you or other people aren't hurt, right? So we can still kind of pivot into like maybe more pro-social kinds of ways of standing up for ourselves while, affirming a very specific part of that. And again, we have to be careful around this sometimes, given maybe even the age and intellectual development some of the folks we work with, like how much they're able to specify that, to make that really clear what we're affirming. How do we assist those who have had change forced upon them or whose status quo is not the status quo that is defined by society? Choice and empowerment, I think, is kind of what we're getting at here. So if I have a status quo or a certain situation that is not comfortable to me or is problematic in some way. So we talk about this in various aspects of the motivational interviewing work. We have situations where people can be in a situation, their status quo, and around any particular issue. Maybe it's around my participation in school, or maybe it's around my using a substance, or maybe it's around a relationship I have with um, a partner or whatever it might be. And I can see that relationship as problematic or not. I can see it as something I want to change or not, and think about stages of change. And sometimes I can have a situation where I'm having a lot of consequence, but I don't see it as having a consequence. And other times, I can just be very active, like I have to do something about this. I have to change. Right. So we see people who get to that place of change on their own and come to us ready for change. Sometimes we have people come in and they're like, I don't think I have a problem. And in conversations, we help them determine like what their change target is. And as we think about, what's the cost of the status quo for them, if say like they're using a substance or they're in a relationship that's not helpful or whatever it might be, or maybe I should say if they're in a relationship that's consequential in some way to them. So we help them reflect and be aware and start to make choices based on what they're experiencing. But we can also have somebody come in where it's like, I have the status quo and it feels like I've never had a choice. A status quo where people are saying like how I need to be or the role I need to take. And that's something where that could be a change target. And they may not have a lot of power right now in their life to be able to change things. I'm thinking about just examples here of maybe like who I want to date, who I want to love, who I want to see, how I identify, whether that's a whole different aspects of identities. It can be how I feel I need to identify potentially even, and what others think I should do. So we see this all the time. And right now, this is a really important piece. I'm thinking specifically, about issues around gender, sexuality, et cetera, and how much support that people have. And there's times when people feel very disempowered because they can't be who they are. They don't feel they can be who they are because it's not safe. Not safe, right? So that very much could be a change target. And it might not be the immediate answer might not be, well, you need to like immediately like come out, or you need to just tell people like, who you are. We always have to think about the context and what this person needs and how they can grow and be who they are in their very genuine way, how we can support that while also being thoughtful around their safety and their resources. So I'm kind of thinking from that perspective. I don't know if that's exactly kind of the topics that we're talking about here, but there's definitely these things about, things that are more external to me that maybe are change targets, things that are more internal to me that are change targets, that are all places where we could be focusing on when we work with young people, and that there's places to affirm all along the way. Even if I don't feel as a practitioner, like I have a lot I can use to really help this person change. Like I don't have a lot of answers for them. Maybe I don't have a lot of resources for them. The being present and being with them, helping, we may not have answers right away. It doesn't mean we just walk away from it and don't try to help at all. I mean, definitely try to research and link and figure out what we can do. But in the process of listening and exploring and being present and affirming people for their ability to talk to us, that's the important work. You know, Maybe I'm working with somebody and really noticing their courage to talk with me right now, their willingness to be open. Like that could be important, even if someone at that moment doesn't feel a lot of empowerment, because of external situations. So I've been talking about this, and many of you in the chat box are totally talking about this, which is affirmations are nice and it's wonderful to be friendly, but affirming is more than that. So it's not just I think someone put in the chat box, it's not just that, attaboy or, at a person, whatever it is, like good job, right? Like it's more than that piece. Not that we don't sometimes say things like that, like, hey, nice work, you did, great on this. Just in human interaction, sometimes we just give people, a high five. I think that's lovely. And I think that's part of being like a natural human interaction. But I'm thinking in like a clinical situation, affirmation, as a strategy. And I've already talked about this idea that we're really trying to find what's right with someone, because we're trying to build the self efficacy and confidence because motivation lives in there. And that thinking affirmation as ways we leverage strengths to promote change. So I kind of really gave that piece at the beginning, that when I feel like I have strengths, I have competence. When I feel like I have competence, I'm willing to take risks and I'm willing to maybe do that next step. So when I praise someone, I'm giving my opinion, evaluation, or approval of what they've done. This is wonderful. It's so good you finished your work, right? It's like, and all that is my evaluation. And it doesn't mean that I'll never say like good job, right? But just being very aware that praise directly or indirectly highlights the difference in power between the person providing the praise and the person receiving it. Right? I don't have like youth come up to me necessarily, not often, saying, "Good job, you got your case notes done today on time," right? Right. Although I'd be happy if someone did like notice that now and again, because I do put a lot of work into it. But it's definitely that piece. So there is this bit of power difference to be sure, and also it doesn't feel always that meaningful. And again, sometimes you'll feel good about the praise, but the praise can come with a price. Sometimes people can feel condescending, but then we also have situations where we have people like constantly seeking out praise, like that approval seeking kind of thing. Like it does feel good. I don't mind it at all. In fact, I'm going to keep trying to do things to have, someone praise me. And then if they don't praise me, oh, did I do something wrong? Or if I went and, I say to someone, oh, that's so great. You're going back to that college class that you tried out and that was hard. I'm so great that you're going back and that's so good. I'm so glad you're doing that. And it's like wonderful. But then what if I change my mind? And I decide, I don't know if I actually am ready to go back to that class. Now it's like this is really awkward situation where it's like, I'm not really going to go back. Now, does that mean like this adult that just praised me is like not going to like me? So in that situation, it might be best to affirm what someone's doing, to affirm someone's behavior as opposed to praise their decision. So instead of saying, good job going back to that college class, I might say, well, I'm noticing that you're thinking a lot about your next steps in life. And right now, today, like you're thinking about this college class. I really am just aware of how much work you're putting into to thinking about how important it is for you to prepare yourself for the future. So now it's like whether or not they took that college class, what's important there is I was really affirming their ability to think and to think for themselves. So you can see how that feels a bit different. So when I affirm someone, I am observing and witnessing their unique and special qualities, skills, strengths, achievements, other beneficial traits. Might be other things I'm missing here, but that's those are my main ideas. And my affirmations about this noticing the other person's gifts. It's not my approval. So I see that you're determined to stay on task so you can finish high school with your friends. I notice that you're always willing to support others in the group who are having a bad day. You have worked so hard to create a series of poems that express how you feel, right? So I'm kind of getting, there's an observation there. So it's also harder for the person to say, um, oh no, like you're just saying that because it's like, these are things I'm noticing. I'm noticing like what you said in groups to other people. I'm watching you right now, like complete these tasks or you've turned these things in. Like there's things that someone's done. There's actually evidence. It's not just me saying something like, "Oh, I'm so proud of you that you're going to finish high school with your friends." And again, it's not like always like that's the worst thing in the world. Really, I want to be really clear on that. Like some praise here and there is not disastrous by any means, but if we're really trying to build like a clinical kind of toolbox using affirmation really strategically, that's how we're kind of thinking about it. Yeah. And so Jean has a really interesting point here. Praise can also establish a condition of worth that can influence the client in ways that we may not anticipate. Right. So again, it's so again, partially because it might be like now I'm only doing something because of the approval, or um, I feel uncomfortable with praise. Maybe my family praise came with a certain amount of expectation. I don't know. There could be all kinds of things. So, can you see how affirmation and praise are different? Seems like in the chat box, getting some of those ideas. And so, one of the things I do here is I have people think about it's helpful to learn affirmation by practicing using what I call observation verbs. Um, and these are verbs that help keep the discussion at the level of what you notice instead of adding our approval. Like, I notice, I hear, I see, I observe. Again, I know it's a bit formatty and it might be like, awkward to have every intervention we say to somebody using some of this. But usually, affirmations mixed in with other things in motivational interviewing, like reflection. We summarize stuff, may ask an open-ended question here and there. So we also want to think about not overusing affirmation in any given meeting. So if I'm sitting with someone, and maybe I'm sitting with them, let's say for 40 minutes. With schools, sometimes it's like 20 minutes, sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes, you have a full 50 minutes. I think about maybe using affirmation, like say no more than 3 times. Maybe if it's a shorter meeting, like no more than once or twice. And why is that? Because affirmation's cool. And I think part of that is if someone comes in, like there's a legit concern that they're working on, if I just start to do lots and lots of affirmation, that at some point can also start to feel a bit phony. Right, like I'm talking about a problem. I mean, I'm flunking out of school here, and I just gave like three, like a bunch of like 6 affirmations. It's like, wait, there's a problem. I'm still working on. Like sometimes it might just feel like it's it's almost well, it is unbalanced. It's unbalanced too much at the strengths when there's also concerns that need to be addressed as well. So again, there's no absolute like number of like only use this many or this many, but think about just the process and how imbalanced any of your sessions feel if it feels like it's getting, yeah, starts to look some of you Sarah puts out this, it looks super fake versus empowering. Yeah. So I don't want to diminish the issue, Dolores adds. Exactly. So it's about balance. Affirmation, praise, or something else is what I called this. Okay, you are so helpful to others on the job. Is that affirmation, praise, or something else? It is an observation. I agree with that. It's like I'm noticing you're helpful to others on the job, but there's something about it, maybe the way it's being said that might feel a bit more like phrase. So in that particular way, maybe we get into making it like a little more specific, of like this like of noticing like um oh, but I'm seeing that like you really find ways of giving a helping hand to other people here when they're working really hard out on the floor today, something like that. It feels like it wants to be an affirmation, but it's too vague to be a true affirmation. I'm gonna have to get behind you on that one. I think made that one a little tough. Kind of start off with a hard one there. But I think that's a good point. Affirmations work best if we can get something specific that we're affirming. I am so proud of how you always help out others on the job. I think specificity is really important. If it feels like more of an opinion, less of an observation, if it's important. Context can also sometimes shape it, even like how I deliver it, my tone of voice, and something can also be really important. So it has to be really sincere, really heartfelt. If I had somebody who's really talking about maybe something that they're really traumatized by, really a lot of grief, and I want to affirm some aspect, maybe just this idea of like, hey, just appreciate your willingness to even talking about this. That might be like enough, and that might be great right there. But I might think about when is the best time to insert affirmation when I'm doing with something really intense like that. Move this into number three. That is wonderful. Praise, right? Okay, that one's pretty straight up praise. How about the fourth bullet? I see that you often have creative ways of solving your social and academic problems. I feel it feels a little more like affirmation, doesn't it? Yeah. All right. How about the fifth bullet, second one from the bottom? You never give up on those you care about. I am going to give that affirmation. Is that like that's a noticing? Like it's like the what I'm noticing. I'm seeing it's kind of unstated. Feels like it's not maybe totally specific, but it's could be specific enough to kind of to affirm. All you need to do is work hard, stay focused, bad advice, and keep stiff upper lip. So something else, and I think a few of you, yeah, some blow off some bad advice, something else definitely. So that's like I'll go ahead with the bad advice or platitudes. Yeah, something else, personal perspective. Say I wanted to give someone some advice about working hard and staying focused and keeping a stiff upper lip. That doesn't necessarily mean it's always bad advice, but we have to think about context, how we're delivering it, and most important for MI, if that's even information that somebody wants. So say, I'm thinking, wow, this person could really benefit from, like staying focused and really applying themselves. How I would deal with that MI is I'd say something like, hey, I'm in this particular problem. Let's say it's in your math class. That's what I'm thinking about. What have you already tried? What's worked for you? Okay. What do you need to know? How could I help you? Is there something you want from me? And maybe they don't know or whatever. Maybe I still want to talk to them about working hard and keeping focused. Then I asked permission. Say, I have some thoughts about this. Is that okay if I share it? And then I was like, there's a number of different things. And maybe I try to not just tell them about working hard and staying focused, but maybe I give them couple other pieces of advice. Then I ask again and say, of all these different things I've mentioned to you, anything seem to fit. So it's not just lobbing some platitude out there. It's like being so careful to see, like, is this even what they want? Is this even helpful? And if I do deliver it, I ask permission and I give them this advice stated in a more clear, specific way, like working hard and staying focused might it still sounds a bit judgy, but about getting support, finding ways to stay on task, whatever it might be. And I give them a menu of options that they can choose from. So that's a lot more work on our part, right? That's a lot more work to be just so incredibly collaborative. It's hard to see this now, but things will get better as you get older, right? So it's something else, definitely. It's dismissive, rather than reassurance, not helpful. Yeah, right, right. And you sometimes you see it out there. I think very well meaning. We have some like I know some public service campaigns about things get better as you get older and stuff, and it's like I'm not going to make any comments about that, but I do think like when we're working with folks, yeah, being really thoughtful like that's not affirmation. You have faced so many obstacles, and you always find people who can help mentor you along the way. It's an affirmation. What do you like best about yourself? It's a good question, but it's not an affirmation. So we in MI we code questions and affirmations differently. Something else, I got the something else. Now that's not a bad question to ask sometimes. And probably if I did that, I could get at some material that I could then affirm. So maybe they answer that, and then I can do an affirmation type of reflection back where it's like, okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that you see yourself as somebody who really delivers, who is very reliable and can get the job done when they're asked to. I just made that up on my head. But the idea of like when I ask a question like that and someone gives me an answer, which is amazing, then I want to respect that answer and affirm it back, like affirm and notice their strengths. So, although the two of you have not always agreed with each other, you've made a lot of effort to get along through probation officer so you can finish your probation on time. Yeah, I think that's pretty much an affirmation. Like I'm noticing the willingness, I'm noticing their ability to be effective, even if they don't like the person that they're with. And then finally, I have this you've been able to make it through a tough hospitalization and return home to support your family. Yeah, I think that one's also affirmation as well. Yeah. Josh shared with his counselor that he just returned to school after being out for 3 weeks. He is behind in most of his classes and is currently checking with his teachers to see how he can catch up. What might be an affirmation? So your commitment and effort in catching up by reaching out mhm, to all your teachers. Take an initiative to find out how to catch up. So you're motivated to catch up. Thank you for coming. Oops. So I'm trying to catch all these. Even though you're behind in your classes, you're making an effort to catch up. There are so many different ways that you could go with this. And that kind of behavior, you can see like there's a lot of different things that Josh is doing. There's a lot of different things that Josh is doing to take care of themselves, right? Go in there and to figure things out. So there's responsibility going up and taking initiative and showing some level of motivation. And so thinking too, if you have a statement here where you have like a great job or a good job, not like that's a terrible thing, but that's again the thing that's more of our praise kind of working its way in there a little bit. So just noticing any of the great or good jobs. Not saying that that's a you should never use that, but just noticing that on your end. So Tiara finished her substance use disorder treatment program 2 weeks ago. Upon discharge, she returned to using methamphetamine, but stopped after 1 day of use and checked herself into a local county hospital. You were seeing her for the first time as she was just released from the hospital. So you're able to catch yourself and go back and get some assistance. Yeah, that's definitely right. Like you catch yourself, you're able to go, you were to go to get help. You stopped yourself, caught yourself and stopped from going into old habits. You've been able to use the resources you have to assist you in the recovery process. Yeah, exactly. I mean, not going back on speed, coming back. Knows where to come back. You know she needed help and did something about it. It takes great strength. It takes great strength to ask for help. So love your focusing on the strength. You showed self-awareness and courage. See to control the situation and reached out for help, right? That's a thing that we can control, right? Is asking for help. Shell's been working as a barista at a local coffee shop. They have been having some difficulties getting to work in the morning. Their boss has threatened to fire them, and they are overwhelmed, angry, and scared that their boss might fire them and their coworkers. You're doing your best to get there. Sounds like you really value your job. Yeah, that's definitely something you could affirm. Like your job's really important to you. So you care and concern your coworkers and want to keep your job. Nice. You're continuing on even with a lot of stress. Jade is uncertain about her primary relationship. She has been seeing her partner for 2 years and they're becoming increasingly jealous and possessive of Jade. Jade is feeling increasingly isolated. She called the domestic violence support line and received your number from that line. She is fearful her partner. She's fearful her partner will find out she has come to see you. Anything there that you can affirm? Took a brave step coming in. Yeah, and so some things can just be like really simple like that. Like that's powerful, right? If I was Jade, that would be really meaningful to me, especially being really afraid and maybe even feeling, badly for being in this situation. You see how important it is to you to ask for some support. Took a lot of courage to come in today. Uh-huh. I understand you're scared. I'm here to support you. Okay. And that might be more of like a nice reflection. Reaching out today for situations brave. Let's work on we continue to be smart and protecting yourself. Okay. So certainly the second part is more of like a advice kind of thing or you're more directive, but definitely got that piece about being brave. Yeah, how hard this is. It shows up. Take a lot of courage. You recognize you deserve a healthy love and setting yourself free. So something like you're affirming like her ability to see that. Okay, nice work around this. Great. Now I think we're going to move into another little piece here. I want to talk a little bit about values. Some good timing. We're doing great. We got still got some other great affirmations coming in. Reached out and taken that first step. It's the hardest. Yeah, really nice. You're giving people a lot of credit. So we're gonna end with affirmation. We get another chance to have a shot at affirmations later on. And I don't know how y'all are feeling, but I notice like when I talk about affirmation, yeah, the dogs are cute. And I do this exercise. I feel good doing it, right? It feels good to hear all the different things that people are coming up with, and all the creative ways that you're all thinking about how you might affirm someone. Yeah, and really giving credit people for their strengths and their abilities and what they're doing. And hopefully, and maybe you're doing this too. I'm kind of doing this in my mind. I'm teaching, so I can't make notes, but please take notes of all the great things that your colleagues are saying and gives you great ideas. Again, the last exercise we do, we're going to create a resource for ourselves of a whole just a heap of affirmations that you'll be able to refer to. Because I think when you're doing this, sometimes it's hard in the sessions, like to remember, like, oh, yeah, like how would I do that? Like, yeah, you can do it, but it's hard to remember some good ones in some way. So I hope that when you leave, I give you a nice long kind of list and resource of some affirmations, then you can be able to access that. Um, it's interesting, Rita, that a lot of people try to brush this under behavior under the rug, and I'm extremely grateful that you have asked for help. Yeah, so you're talking about your own self. You have like your own gratitude, their little self disclosure, but you're also, though, I think, acknowledging that they did something well in asking for help. Our values are fundamentally positive and meaningful pieces of our lives, and they give us direction, and they're motivating. What makes motivational interviewing motivating? That when we're able to really address and bring in like value into the work, it provides this sense of I like to think of it as like the compass. Helps people find direction. And the cool thing is that we can use values for all kinds of life domains. So I'm going to give you and have you practice and play with a value sorting tool. I'm going to do that in a minute. And what's cool with the value sorting tool is you can look at it and you can like sort out your values for any particular topic or life domain. So maybe as I give you this, you'll be like, well, I want to check out and kind of sort out, think about my values in relationship to my intimate relationship. I want to sort out my values in relationship to being a parent. I want, that those relationships. I want to sort out my values in terms of work, my work life. And I have had people I work with do value sorting for all kinds of things, and they'll send them to me, and it's great because we always have it like as a resource. And then when they're like stuck with something, it's like, let's look at your values and let's think about your behavior and your choices and what you're thinking and how you're feeling in relationship to how you are in the world compared to your values. It's like what you're doing, is it helping you get to that? And the cool thing about values as opposed to a goal is that a goal we can go and achieve and it's done, which is nice. We can always have more goals, but values, um it's like we're never done. Like throughout my entire life, my values may change, but throughout my whole life, I can be going toward a values, and it's very helpful in giving us direction. So what we do with value sorting is like Q sorts. So you might be familiar with that concept and kind of in research. Um, and Q sorting, it's like basically I'm going to give you a whole list of values, and then you can move them into categories of important, very important, and not important. And then um, what I do is there's different ways of doing this, but I have people take the very important list, and we can, with this particular tool, you can summarize them, and then we could just go down the list of the things that are very important. You can actually go through all of these things, but I like to have them think about other very important, and which ones do we want to just really hold for a moment and just kind of think about my behavior in not going to school, my behavior in searching for a job or not searching for a job, my behavior in be in this relationship or not be in a relationship. How does it help me be trustworthy? How does it help me be gratitude? How does it help me be creative? And if it's facilitating or getting in the way, that's a way we develop discrepancy and build some motivation around change. If we can see like how it is or isn't serving for us. And some of the research with like young people, young adults, in particular, is like values really critical. Like values directed work is really, really helpful. And it sometimes can take time for people to talk about their values and to even do the value sorting. A lot of times I do it with them so it gets done, kind of thing, as opposed to sending it home. But sometimes I send it home, and it's often very, very fruitful. It often really helps break through some of the I don't know type stuff of life. And basically, what we're doing is we're helping youth and young adults identify their most treasured values so they start to develop positive and meaningful identities and make choices consistent with these identities. Like they start to get a sense of who they are. And isn't that like such an important piece of growing up? Like, isn't that such an important piece of doing work with the adolescents and young adults? Although I'm gonna have you get a chance to do the value sorting exercise. So you get a chance to see what this looks like. And I'll show you on the screen what it looks like and start to sort out how might our approach to MI be different considering where our help seekers are in the stages of change? If it's a different at all, asking for a peer worker perspective. So it's a good question. So in terms of stages of change, pre-action and action. So pre-action is when I'm pre-contemplating, I don't think I have a problem. When I'm contemplating, I'm really ambivalent. When I'm preparing for change, like I got it cognitively, I need to change. I haven't done anything yet, but I'm starting to plan for doing it. Action is when I'm actually doing it. I am, going back to school. I am stopping a substance, I am making friends, whatever it is I have as my target. And then if I can maintain that behavior, that's another important piece of it. And then sometimes relapse or return to behavior, sometimes the term that's used is incorporated in part of that cycle because we often go back and forth with different stages. We might be in action for a while, but then maybe we go back to being ambivalent. That's really common. So in pre-action, I'm using a lot of motivational interviewing because I'm really helping somebody determine and engage and sort out where they're at in the status quo and helping develop that change talk, reinforcing the change talk so we can kind of move to action, move it a little bit. And then when I'm in action, we might be doing some things that are maybe kind of connected to other aspects of our work or other theoretical orientations. So if I do case management, we might be doing case management when we're in action. We might be doing some aspect of, a health intervention. We might be doing a CBT group. We might be involving someone in a DBT program and family therapy. So an action is often where we're doing some of the other work that we do. And I'm going to show you how to use this fantastic, fantastic tool, which as far as I know is kind of in the public domain. This is I received this from the acceptance and commitment therapy community. That's a theoretical orientation that I employ. And it's very consistent with motivational interviewing in terms of being very values driven. And you basically start by choosing an area of your life that you want to enhance, improve, or explore. I like that. So you have some options here. So I want to explore my relationship to, let's see, staying in school. And then in this area of my life, number three here, so in this area of staying in school, I want to be blank. And then I start to think about the values in relationship to staying in school. So maybe I go down here and there's no right or wrong way to sort this, but is being kind connected to my staying in school? Not really. So for me, so I put that in not important. Persistent commitment, committed. Yeah, you know what? That's very important for this. Fair and just. I'm not sure if that really totally fits for me. Caring, self-caring. Well, I kind of realized part of my problem with schools, I as I don't do a lot of self-care and that kind of gets in the way. So I'm gonna put that important. So you can see basically the red, green, and blue, you can sort them into categories. And what you do is at the end, you can summarize it and it creates like a whole list of which ones, like an actual word list of which values went into which category. And you can restart it, pulls everything back. So you can save it. I use it for all kinds of people. I have PDFs. I can bring it up to various sessions, and then we can stop and look at it. And the way we use it motivationally too is like, hey, so in what ways is smoking weed helping you with this? Or I start thinking about you have this particular value you're thinking about, like how is it helping you do this or that, and just being really curious. But now I know a little bit about someone. Now I have a little more information that's actually meaningful about how they see the world. And I also know what kinds of things people care about in terms of some of these items. Values can be used to help check one's direction or next steps, with this idea of like how or what you're doing or we're doing together. How's this consistent or not consistent with your values? Do we need to take a turn? Do we need to take a direction? And again, I love the idea of thinking of values as really being a compass, kind of putting us on the right path. We can affirm or reinforce behavior that's consistent with one's values. again, I'm noticing that, by putting all this effort into studying, but putting all this effort into building your relationship with your friends. You are being really, working toward, having the connections with others that you really hope for. You're really working toward being successful academically that you told me is really important to you. So I can start to make those links between this is what you said you care about, and this is what you're doing. It's a great way of helping with motivation to help motivate continued change, but it also can help us develop discrepancy. If someone says they really care about their friends, and that's like a real high value of theirs, but then coming in, they're talking about arguments or fights or other things. Maybe that's a conversation we have. Is like how is like being involved, regardless of like whose fault it is, how it's being involved in these types of interactions. How's it helping you or not helping you have the friendships that you want? Is there something we could do? Is there something we could think about that would help you, be with your friends in ways that are more consistent with what you care about? And that many times I have people return to their guidance, the list for guidance, and it helps us actively shapes people's identities, help determine choices, and that can be motivating. Like I have kind of a path, as if some sense of like what I'm doing here in counseling, how I'm spending my time. So, thinking now a little bit about characteristics of successful changers. So, we're thinking about motivational interviewing, about having a conversation about change. Um, and with youth, we might not get a lot of change talk from them, right? Someone comes in, especially if they're frustrated, maybe they feel blamed, maybe they feel picked on or put upon, those kinds of things. It can be hard. It's true for us as adults too, but I think young people, kind of coming to life and learning about life's frustrations, we can be really focused or very kind of fused or stuck with certain thoughts, like thoughts around unfairness, something's unfair, or something boring, or something is stupid. All the kinds of things that we might see things get labeled. And for us as providers, I can be like, okay, great. I'm reflecting, I'm kind of getting a sense of like what they care about, but I'm not hearing a lot of change talk. And so certainly there's things we can do around like, there's many of interventions we could use around starting to elicit, or be evocative around change talk, like I'm hearing you say like you're like so frustrated in this class, what would it look like if um, everything in this class really suited you? What kinds of things would be different? If you actually got along in this class felt like it was a good, rewarding class, what kinds of things would be happening? You try to help people envision a little bit, imagine like you did start to make some changes in how you talk to your teacher. How might things be different by the end of the year? Those are some good evocative questions we can start potentially asking to kind of seed a little bit of changes. What are a couple of reasons for getting along with your teacher? You how is getting along with your teacher important to you? Maybe it is or isn't, right? We'd be able to kind of explore some of those things, and answers to those questions might really help us kind of move in there. But there's also another like great piece too. This little exercise called characteristics of successful changers, and it's really an exercise that we can use to help people, really look at the strengths um, that are commonly associated with change, and help people start to envision themselves, start to imagine themselves, start to see themselves as being change agents. And then, once a list has been generated around this, we can start to really be curious with someone about how they describe their own strengths and how their strengths show up, and help them start to see themselves as someone who isn't necessarily passive or completely always stuck all the time, but that it gets a little piece about having an ability to see themselves in a lot of different contexts. Right now with this teacher, you're just feeling really, really stuck. Now I'm noticing here though, you going into your list here, you're someone who's actually able to do XYZ, and you've been able to get unstuck in other situations doing this. Tell me more about how you use this, and tell me more how you did that. And we can always imagine if like any of these skills might be helpful with what you're going through now. This is great for group or individual work. Sometimes I find it great for groups, especially if you have a group of adolescents where it's like nothing ever works and everyone's kind of on board with like everything sucks. Negative leaders. And sometimes putting out something like this in a group, Here it is. And saying, hey, like pick one of these at times when you've been able to behave this way. What was the situation? What was going on? And get a group conversation going. I love doing adolescent groups because what happens is that if someone thinks it's really dumb, all it takes is one person to start talking about ways that they've been creative, and it just starts to churn. It's again, it shifts it from maybe negative leadership to positive leadership. You can start to get folks like starting to influence each other. So again, with my example that I've used about I hate my teacher, there's nothing I can do. I'm a victim in this class. I might be like, hey, pick I want you to pick three of these things and tell me about time you've used them. And they grunt and groan or annoyed. It's like maybe they start with one. Or it's like, I wonder if you could imagine picking some of these. Clearly, sometimes you have some people who they just won't do it. I'm just not going to do this. And I'm not going to force anyone to do something. It's just going to make them unhappy. But often, someone will pick at least one of these things, and so maybe they pick something like, I don't know, knowledgeable. It's like, tell me how you use that to get yourself unstuck before, to change before. And I don't even necessarily have to link it back to this teacher situation. I could if I felt there was an opening around that. Sometimes if I'm too obvious around that with a young person, that can create some resistance, but some pushback. That may be too obvious, but sometimes it's like I can just keep affirming about this way that they're able to use information and problem solve and figure things out for themselves. And maybe at that point, or maybe later on, I can wonder how being a knowledgeable person might be useful for this place right now where they're stuck. So, really great piece. We're going to do a little exercise around this. Jot down the characteristics that you've experienced yourself. Maybe you write down how the characteristics showed up for you in the past, how it might show up for you in the future, but you can use other prompts. Maybe we also ask somebody, what do these characteristics say about you? Which ones on the list do you like? What might you do to develop the characteristics that you really resonate with? And so again, some of these can be really fantastic for group work. So I'm going to invite you to answer one or two of these questions. Maybe the first one about how the characteristics showed up for you, and maybe another one about what does it mean about you. So yeah, feel free just to kind of go through this a little bit yourself. So Dolores, this idea of like when someone's in crisis, you can remind them of a time when their values supported them, when they managed themselves well. That is kind of a classic and really effective kind of a suicide management technique. If you're doing safety planning, that's actually a really great thing to do on your collaborative safety plan. In addition to all the other things you're doing to make sure that someone's safe and they're in an environment that's safe, and if they have any ideation and if they have a plan that's been deactivated, all the immediate things we want to do if we have someone who's able to participate in the safety plan, and we're thinking about their resources and we're thinking about who they could ask for help and that their web of support. That is a wonderful thing to do, is to do exactly that. Like, think of the time when you were really stuck before. How did you get through it? How are you a survivor? It's a great technique. Cool. And now think about this, kind of maybe do a pivot to ask maybe one of the other questions, like how do you see any one of these being able to like help you get unstuck in the future? Or what did some of these say about you? All of these could be really great follow-up questions, right? Because what we're trying to do again is to really help build the sense of a young person as someone who's empowered, someone who's able to take care of themselves, and then helping them see a link between some of these qualities and then an actual behavior. Can you imagine getting unstuck in the future? How being grateful might help you get unstuck. Well, maybe if I'm finding myself really ruminating or stuck or feeling bad about myself or feeling like I'm a victim or what have you, I could think of the times, things I'm grateful for and why I'm grateful for them. That might help change my point of view. I'm just thinking of some of the things that you're putting in the chat box. Um, I think about, my wisdom, maybe in the future, if I, get stuck, I can, recognize the fact that, um, I have some knowledge and ways of really putting knowledge together that allows me to be creative and effective in coming up with solutions. So maybe I can tap into that future. So for the values exercise, could the frustration experienced from categorizing values be a trigger for the onset of in this case, are you thinking of MI being mental illness? I don't think so. I don't think it's I mean, I suppose anything could happen. Anything could be anything. Um, I work with a lot of people who have like pretty significant mental health challenges. And what I find is that if someone is particularly symptomatic or about ready to be symptomatic and the values exercise, like the worst thing I have noticed is that they just don't want to do it. Like they just aren't up to it. So the values itself, I find, are I think positive enough and relatable enough to where for many people they aren't that triggering. There could always be exceptions. So if I'm sitting here doing this with someone and I'm noticing that they're getting agitated and sweating and like this thing, I might, get to typically I as you know, I'd always ask if this is something they would even want to do as opposed to just saying, here, let's do this. So they're gonna have given me permission. I would have explained it anyway. But if I get a sense that no, they're not really into it or this is really activating, I would just, have a conversation with them about that and maybe not do it that day. And we've talked about using the characteristics of successful changers, and this all addresses, ways to really build strength when working with young people. And again, the research around strength building in young people, it's all over the place. I mean, it's not all over the place in terms of outcomes all over the place. The benefits of it, there's like lots and lots of research and resources over the years that have been designed around that. We know it's important to help people tap into things that they do well. I think what this model does and what we're doing when we're thinking about some of these things is we're being more specific. We're helping people really think specifically about, what strengths they do have, how do they show up, how might they access them, how might they use them. So for our final exercise, give you something as a nice way of kind of closing down for today and thinking about this a little bit more. I am going to have you put into the chat single words that are affirming of the people that you work with. So, single positive affirming words that describe the people you work with. So, for instance, maybe I don't even need to do it. People are already on the job, committed, strong, resilient, creative, flexible. By the way, if you're thinking about bringing an exercise like back to your staff, let's say you're running a staff meeting or someone asks you about this training, if you want like a really like very easy entry kind of exercise to do with someone, do this. Do this in a staff meeting. Take a, if you're a person, take out a whiteboard or go to a whiteboard or sheets of white paper, get a marker, or do this online, a chat box, and just say, hey, let's all brainstorm all the positive traits of people we work with. Because just doing that is powerful, right? And we're always thinking again of problems and things that people are doing and troubles and stresses. So just have this great list. And now the next thing I'm going to have you do is you have that link here. I want you to click on that link. But in addition to just putting the words, go ahead and write in an actual affirmation. So I have hardworking. You're able to give 100% effort. And these are my references for this training. So pretty much everything I did here is based on Bill Miller's and Steve Rolnick's book, Motivational Interviewing, Helping People Change, third edition. The fourth edition is coming out the end of this year, beginning of next year. So think about that. If that's something you'd like to invest in, it's a great investment. I also base a lot of my work, or I always review the motivational interviewing treatment integrity tool, which really speaks to like, am I adherent skills? And it's a fidelity tool that we'd actually use. You can look up the mighty, the interviewing treatment integrity coding tool. You can get it for free, and it actually gives you guidance on how to provide responses that are collaborative, that are empathic, that are affirming. Like, what do they look like? How do we code for that when we hear it in a conversation? Like, how do we notice it and build and get better at it, at our application of it? They also have a book by David Rosengren, Building Motivational Interviewing Skills. And this is a great book if you just want to have a lot of great exercises to practice. So these are also wonderful resources that are available out there.
Highlights, everybody's aware of what we have coming up here. We have a couple trainings, they're workshop, really interactive workshops for school and general mental health people around working with suicide and self-harm prevention for young children. That's elementary age. We have a couple of resources that we just published. And so these are going to be basically a practice walkthrough of the resources coming up on April 18th and 20th. We also have a creating safe spaces for peer support providers who are BIPOC. That's Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Also on the later in the month, April 19th. This is going to come on the website as a recording. Follow us on social if you'd like, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And lastly, we want to give a word of thanks to our funder, SAMHSA, and to today's presenter, Dr. Kristen Dempsey.